The cavern was still, its walls damp with hidden streams, its air cool compared to the burning wasteland outside. The devourer lay curled against the stone, its chest rising and falling slowly, every breath a thunderous echo in the dark. Its wounds glowed faintly where plasma had scorched through the scales, but the monster endured. Beside it sat the human, his back against the stone, eyes fixed on the cavern's entrance. He had not slept. He did not dare. Beyond the storm, engines howled. Hunters circled endlessly, scanning, waiting for their prey to emerge. The human whispered into the dark. They won't stop. Not ever. The devourer's glowing eyes opened, fixing on him. The beast did not speak words, but in its gaze there was an answer. Then neither will we. Far above, the Empress's flagship hovered like a black dagger against the storm clouds. From her throne she watched the reports stream in, destroyed skimmers, ruined walkers, dead hunters, and, worst of all, silence from the cavern. Her generals knelt before her, trembling. The beast hides, my Empress. We will smoke it out. It cannot last long. The Empress rose, her jeweled mask glinting in the lightning. You underestimate them. That mistake has cost you enough lives. She stepped forward, her cloak trailing like blood. I will deal with them myself. In the cavern, the human stirred. A faint glow spread across the walls, brighter with every passing heartbeat. The devourer growled, low and uneasy. The glow became fire. The cavern's mouth lit up as if the sun itself had descended. The Empress entered, clad in armor black as night, her mask a blazing crown of jewels. In her hand she carried a spear tipped with burning plasma, its light searing the stone. Her voice cut the dark like a blade. Beast, human, you shame my empire. You defy my will. For that you will die by my hand. The devourer rose, slow and heavy, but still towering, its roar shaking stone from the ceiling. The human climbed onto its back once more, his face grim but unafraid. Then come, he shouted. Try and kill us! The battle erupted like thunder. The Empress moved faster than any guard, her spear striking in a blur of fire. Plasma burned into the devourer's scales, drawing roars of pain. But the beast struck back with claws sharp as blades. The cavern shook as monster and Empress clashed, stone crumbling around them. The human guided the beast, shouting, pulling at its scales to direct its strikes. He ducked fire, clung through impacts that would have shattered stone, and still he urged the devourer onward. The Empress laughed, cold and terrible. You think a human can command a beast? You think you can resist me? I am the Empire. I am eternal. Her spear struck deep, burning through the devourer's side. The beast howled, collapsing to one knee. The cavern trembled as rocks fell from above. The human nearly tumbled off, but he clung tighter, blood streaking his face. His voice rose in defiance. You are not eternal. Nothing built on fear ever is. With a final roar, the devourer lunged. Its jaws closed on the Empress's spear, shattering it in a blast of sparks. Then its claws swept forward, striking the Empress and hurling her against the cavern wall. Her jeweled mask cracked. Fragments clattered across the stone. For the first time, silence fell. The Empress's eyes, burning with rage, fixed on the human. This is not the end, she hissed. Even if I fall, my empire will hunt you. Your names will be cursed. You will never escape. The human met her gaze, his voice steady. Then we will become something greater than fear. A story your empire cannot kill. The devourer roared one last time, the sound echoing through the cavern and out into the storm. Hunters waiting outside froze as the earth shook beneath their feet, as though the world itself answered. When the dust settled, the cavern mouth stood empty. The Empress was gone. The beast and the human had vanished into the storm. Weeks passed. Whispers spread through the Empire's prisons, its streets, its warships. They said the Empress had been defeated. They said a human had ridden the devourer into battle and lived. They said the cage of monsters had been broken, and that somewhere out in the galaxy the two still roamed free. Prisoners whispered it as hope. Soldiers muttered it as fear. Lords spoke of it as treason. But the tale spread all the same. In a forgotten port, deep in the shadow of a dying star, a group of smugglers gathered. One had seen the storm of Koresh with his own eyes. I swear it, he told the others. The human and the beast fought the Empress herself. And they survived. Around the table the smugglers exchanged glances. Some laughed, others frowned. But none dismissed it outright, because in their hearts they wanted it to be true. And far away, hidden among the endless storms of uncharted worlds, the Devourer rested in the shade of jagged cliffs. Its wounds were healing, its scales regaining their shine. At its side sat the human, staring at the stars above. His face was tired, scarred, but his eyes still burned bright. He reached up, resting a hand against the beast's scales. "We did it. We're still alive." The Devourer lowered its head beside him, eyes glowing soft and steady. For a moment there was peace, but both knew it would not last. The Empire would keep hunting. More battles would come, and yet neither feared it, for together they had done the impossible. Together they had defied an empire. Together they had become a legend. The galaxy was vast and news traveled slowly, but stories traveled faster than light. From the mines of the asteroid belts to the drowned cities of the water worlds, whispers carried the same tale. A human had tamed the Devourer. Together they had shattered the Empress's arena. Together they had escaped. At first many laughed. Some called it a prisoner's lie, the ramblings of those desperate for hope. But laughter soon fell silent when hunters sent to Koresh never returned. Entire patrols vanished in the storms. Fleets launched, yet wreckage was all that came back. If anything returned at all, something was out there. Something no empire could cage. The Empress did not die. She could not. Broken, scarred, but alive, she withdrew deep into her throne world. Her jeweled mask was gone, replaced by black iron. Her voice, once cold and sharp, was now fire. Her words burned across the empire. "The human and the beast are not legends. They are outlaws, traitors, abominations. Bring them to me, dead or alive." Her decree spread across 1,000 systems. Bounties were posted on every world. Rewards enough to buy fleets. Hunters, mercenaries, assassins all sharpened their blades. But while the Empress demanded silence, the story only grew louder. In the wastelands of an abandoned colony, the Devourer crouched low, its massive frame hidden beneath shattered towers. Its scales had healed, dark and gleaming. At its side, the human prepared a small fire from the ruins of the city. His hands were steady now. No longer the trembling of a prisoner, but the movements of someone who had survived the impossible. He stared into the flames, thinking of the words he had spoken in the cavern. "We will become something greater than fear," but could they? Could two fugitives truly stand against an empire of countless worlds? The Devourer's eyes glowed faintly as it watched him, as if sensing the doubt. The beast rumbled low and steady like a vow. The human reached up and rested a hand on its snout. "You're right. We started something. Now we finish it." On distant worlds, rebellion stirred. In the spice fields of Doran, workers whispered the human's name while hiding stolen blades. In the prison blocks of Koresh, inmates refused to bow during roll call, chanting instead, "The Devourer lives." In the great markets of Zyros, merchants painted the image of a human riding a black-scaled beast, hanging it in secret on their stalls. The Empress's guards tore the images down, but for every one destroyed, 3 more appeared. The story was no longer just hope. It was a weapon. But the Empress struck back with fire. Entire villages burned for speaking the human's name. Families vanished into the night. Whole prison ships were emptied into the void as warning. The Empire thought fear would smother the story. It only made it burn brighter. The human and the Devourer became phantoms. Hunters reported glimpses. A black shadow moving through the storms of Koresh. A roar heard in the mountains of Tras. A human seen leading refugees through enemy lines. No proof, no bodies. Only whispers. But whispers were enough. One night, on a smuggler's freighter drifting far from patrol routes, a message appeared across the ship's cracked hollow screen. The crew froze as the static cleared. The image was simple. A human silhouette astride a beast with burning eyes, and a voice spoke, clear and steady. "The Empire cannot kill what it fears. The Empire cannot cage what is free. We are coming." The transmission cut, leaving only silence. The smugglers sat frozen, then broke into cheers. The message spread, copied, carried, smuggled across system after system. For the first time in generations, the people of the Empire believed in something stronger than the Empress. They believed in the legend. In the throne world, the Empress stood before her generals, her iron mask glowing in the firelight. Her voice was a growl. "They dare." She clenched her hand, claws biting into her palm. "Then let the galaxy burn. I will crush every world if I must. I will drown their hope in blood." Her generals bowed low, but behind their masks, Even they felt unease, because they had heard the whispers too. And far from the throne, hidden beneath the endless stars, the human stood atop a cliff, wind tearing at his ragged cloak. The devourer loomed beside him, scales gleaming in the starlight. The human's voice was quiet but filled with fire. "They think we are running. They're wrong." Dawn broke over Koresh in fire and dust. The storm clouds parted just enough to let the dying sun burn red across the horizon, casting long shadows over the fortress. The air crackled with static from the lightning storm still circling the wastelands. Inside, the guards were restless. Their armor clanked louder than usual. Their voices were clipped, harsh, as if to hide their unease. The Empress's order had spread through every hall, every barracks. Today, the beast and the human would die. The arena was prepared for slaughter. It was a pit of stone and steel, wide enough to hold armies, ringed with towers bristling with weapons. Thousands of seats had been carved into the walls, and today they overflowed with prisoners, guards, and visiting lords who had come to witness the spectacle. They cheered and shouted, waving banners bearing the serpent sigil of the Empress. For them, this was not execution. It was entertainment, blood to remind them of her power. In the highest seat, beneath a canopy of black iron, the Empress herself appeared in a blaze of jeweled armor. Her mask glittered like fire. She raised a hand and the crowd fell silent. "Today," her voice rang out cold and sharp, "we prove to the galaxy that no beast, no prisoner, no human can stand against Koresh. Let all who defy us see their fate." The crowd roared. The gates thundered open. The devourer was dragged into the arena, chains glowing hot as plasma coils tightened around its limbs. Its scales were scarred from endless lashings, its body bleeding from fresh cuts. But its eyes still burned, glowing faint yellow as it struggled against its bonds. The crowd cheered louder at its fury, throwing debris into the pit, screaming for blood. Then another gate opened, and the human was shoved forward. He stumbled into the sand unarmed, wearing only torn prison rags. Chains bound his wrists, though they seemed unnecessary. His frame was thin, fragile, nothing compared to the monster beside him. The prisoners in the stands leaned forward. Some jeered, but many watched in silence, eyes narrowed, waiting. The human looked up at the beast. Their gazes met across the pit. The devourer's roar shook the arena, but the sound was not rage, it was defiance. Executioners marched in, clad in heavy armor, wielding spears crackling with energy, flamethrowers that hissed with heat. They spread out across the arena floor, circling the chained beast and its human companion. The captain of the watch lifted his hand. "Kill them both." The first strike came with fire. A flamethrower roared, spilling torrents of flame across the beast's side. The devourer bellowed in pain, straining against its chains. The smell of burning scales filling the air. The human dropped to the ground, shielding his face from the blaze. But even through the smoke, he did not scream. He raised his head, eyes burning with something the crowd could not understand. The devourer's roar shook the arena walls. Its massive claws slammed into the ground, and with a crack like thunder, one of the chains snapped. The crowd gasped. "Hold it," the captain shouted. "Tighten the bindings." "Burn it harder!" But the beast was already breaking free. With a violent surge, the devourer tore the remaining chains apart. Sparks exploded. Metal shrieked, and the executioners stumbled back in panic. The monster rose to its full height, towering over the arena, scales glinting black in the firelight. It spread its jaws and let loose a roar so powerful that glass shattered in the towers above. The prisoners in the stands leapt to their feet. Some screamed. Some cheered. Guards fumbled with weapons, firing plasma bolts into the pit. The bolts struck the beast's hide, burning into its flesh, but the devourer stood firm, and at its side the human rose to his feet. "Run!" he shouted, voice carrying across the chaos. The devourer lowered its head, and the human climbed onto its back as though he had always belonged there. The crowd erupted. Guards opened fire from every angle, but the beast charged, crushing executioners underfoot, smashing through walls of steel. The ground shook with every step. The Empress rose from her throne, her jeweled mask glinting with fury. "Stop them," she screamed. "Kill them both!" Plasma cannons boomed from the towers. Fire rained from above. But the devourer shielded the human with its massive body, roaring as bolts seared its scales. Blood ran across its sides, but its eyes burned brighter than ever. It smashed into a tower, toppling it into the stands. The crowd shrieked as stone and steel collapsed. Prisoners roared from their cages, some cheering, some pounding against the bars until their claws bled. The human clung to the beast's neck, shouting directions into its ear. And impossibly it obeyed. Together they tore through the arena's gates, leaving ruin in their wake. For the first time in the history of Koresh, an execution had failed. For the first time the cage of monsters had been broken. As the dust cleared, the Empress stood in her shattered throne, her fury shaking through the chamber. "They will not escape," she hissed. "Send the hunters. Send the fleets. Hunt them to the edge of the stars if you must. But bring me their heads." Outside, under the storm-filled sky, the human and the beast ran free across the wasteland. Behind them, the fortress of Koresh burned, and ahead of them the galaxy trembled, for no one had ever seen such a thing. A human riding the back of the Devourer. The Empire's greatest nightmare. The legend had begun. The wastelands of Koresh stretched endless under a storm-dark sky. Red lightning split the horizon, and the wind howled with sand so fine it cut like glass. Through the chaos thundered the Devourer. Its massive claws tore trenches into the earth with every stride. Blood dripped from its wounds, seared black where plasma bolts had struck, but still it ran. Upon its back clung the human, his hands gripping rough scales, his eyes fixed forward. Behind them the fortress burned. Smoke curled into the storm clouds. The arena lay in ruins, its towers collapsed, its gates shattered, and the hunters were already moving. The Empress's orders traveled faster than any storm. Warships broke from orbit, black hulls glinting with serpent sigils. Squadrons of skimmers rose from hangars, engines screaming as they dove into the wastes. "Do not let them escape," came the command, cold and sharp. The galaxy must not see this disgrace. Kill the beast. Kill the human. The hunters swarmed across the wasteland like vultures. The Devourer roared as the first skimmers swooped low, plasma fire raining down. Explosions split the sand, throwing waves of dust into the air. The beast swerved, claws gouging into the ground, shielding the human from the blasts. "Left!" the human shouted, pointing through the storm. The monster obeyed, veering hard as bolts streaked past. A skimmer swept too low, and with a surge of muscle the Devourer leapt. Its jaws snapped shut, crushing metal and bone alike. The wreckage crashed in flames behind them. The hunters did not retreat. More poured from the skies, firing relentlessly. The human clung tighter, voice carrying over the storm. "They'll never stop. Not until we're dead." The beast rumbled, low and deep, as though answering. "Then we fight together," the human said, his tone steady despite the fire around them. The Devourer roared in agreement, its voice rolling like thunder. They pressed onward through the wasteland. The storm thickened, sand slashing against skin and scale alike. Visibility dropped to almost nothing, but still the hunters came. Shadows loomed in the haze, tall walkers, iron-legged machines armed with cannons. The lead walker fired, plasma tearing a crater into the ground. The shockwave flung the human forward, nearly throwing him from the beast's back. But the Devourer crouched low, shielding him before charging. It slammed into the walker's legs with the force of an avalanche. Metal shrieked. The machine toppled, exploding as it struck the ground. The prisoners watching from their cells, still chained in the fortress, could only imagine the chaos. But rumors would spread faster than fire. The human and the beast, tearing through the Empress's hunters. Hours passed in blood and storm. The Devourer slowed, its breath heavy, its wounds burning. The human slid down its side, landing in the dust. He pressed his hand against the monster's scars, his voice low. "You're hurt." The beast lowered its head, eyes glowing faintly through the storm. It made a sound, not pain, not anger, but something else. Trust. The human's jaw tightened. He looked to the storm-wrapped horizon. "We can't stop here. If we do, they'll surround us," the Devourer rumbled, then lowered itself further. The meaning was clear. Climb the human mounted once more, and together they pushed onward into the storm. Above, the Empress's flagship cut through the clouds, its hull bristling with weapons. On the bridge she stood unmoving, her jeweled mask reflecting the lightning outside. Her generals shifted nervously behind her. Reports poured in, fallen skimmers, destroyed walkers, dead hunters. "My Empress," one dared to speak, "the beast is stronger than expected." "And the human." "Enough," the Empress hissed. Her voice was sharp enough to draw blood. "They are not strong. They are desperate." Hunt them harder, bleed them dry. If the hunters fail, she paused, her masked gaze fixed on the storm, then I will finish this myself. On the wastes below, the hunters regrouped. Dozens of skimmers spread out, circling like predators closing in. The human saw them first. He leaned forward, gripping the beast's scales. They mean to trap us. The devourer's roar shook the storm. It charged into the circle, claws tearing apart the ground, tail whipping with the force of a battering ram. Skimmers exploded one after another, but there were too many. Bolts struck the beast's side. Flames burned along its back. The fortress of Koresh had never known silence like this. Usually the cage of monsters was filled with noise, the clash of chains, the roar of beasts, the bark of guards. But now every sound seemed to hesitate. Even the prisoners, creatures with hides like steel and voices like thunder, kept their distance from the bars. The reason was simple. The devourer had changed. Once it had been rage made flesh. It pulled at chains until the walls shook, tore apart anything that came close, and roared until blood ran from the ears of guards. The Empire had marked it for death because nothing could control it. Nothing could bend it until now. The human had done the unthinkable. Day after day he entered the pit, and day after day he returned alive. The guards expected the miracle to end. They waited for the moment when the beast would snap and devour him whole. They kept rifles trained, fingers tense, praying for an excuse to fire. But the moment never came. Instead, the human brought scraps of food and soft words. Instead of blood, there was calm. Instead of screams, there was silence. The monster that had destroyed armies now sat with lowered head, accepting bread from a fragile pair of human hands. At first, the guards laughed nervously. "Look at it," one muttered from the viewing tower. "Like a pet." "Pets don't crush war camps," another shot back, though his voice cracked. The laughter faded quickly. Fear returned, heavier than before. Because this was not just strange. It was dangerous. If a human could bend a monster like the devourer, what else could they do? The prisoners noticed too. Through bars and slits in the walls, they watched the human walk freely beside the beast. The devourer let him touch its snout, stroke its scarred scales, and whisper words no one else could hear. Whispers spread through the cells. The monster follows him. No. The monster trusts him. He is not prey, he is something else. For the first time in memory, the prisoners, murderers, raiders, and killers were not watching the guards. They were watching a human. The Empress's spies delivered reports within days. They carried trembling voices across star systems, describing the impossible scene. The Empress listened in silence, her face hidden behind a jeweled mask. When they finished, she rose from her throne, her cloak dragging like a shadow. "No human will command what the Empire cannot," she said coldly. "This bond is an insult to our power." Her voice cut through the chamber like a blade. "Prepare the arena. Let them both die together." Back on Koresh, the guards doubled their watch. The human was no longer just another prisoner. He was a threat. Soldiers eyed him with hatred as he walked past, muttering slurs under their breath, but none dared strike him. Something about the way the beast stared from its pit kept their hands frozen. The human did not answer their hatred. He saved his words for the monster. Sometimes he told stories in a voice too soft for the guards to catch. Sometimes he sang a tune that echoed strangely in the pit, carrying through the chains and shadows. The devourer would listen, glowing eyes half shut, its chest rising and falling like the tide. And sometimes, though only when no guard dared speak, the beast would rumble back, low and deep as if answering. One night, a young guard stood watch alone. He was new, still green, but already terrified of Koresh. He stared down into the pit, rifle shaking in his hands. The human was there again, sitting cross-legged near the monster's side. His hand rested lightly against the beast's scales, his head bowed as if in thought. The guard's fear turned to anger. "Why?" he muttered under his breath. "Why you? Why not the rest of us?" The human did not answer, but the beast lifted its head, eyes glowing brighter in the dark. The guard stumbled back, rifle clattering against the railing. He fled, boots hammering the floor, never daring to look back. The bond grew stronger. The beast no longer pulled at its chains. It no longer roared at shadows. It saved its voice for the human, a sound like thunder rolling deep underground. The guards had no word for it. But the prisoners began to whisper one trust. The devourer trusted the human. The captain of the watch could take no more. Standing above the pit one evening, he shouted down, his voice echoing through the fortress. "You think this protects you, human? You think the Empress will allow it? Tomorrow both of you burn." His words fell like stones, but the human did not flinch. He only raised his eyes, calm, steady, unafraid. Then he placed his hand on the beast's snout. And the monster, Koresh's greatest terror, bowed its head. That night storms raged harder than ever outside. Red lightning split the sky, thunder boomed across the plains. But inside the fortress silence stretched, heavy and waiting. The bond was sealed, the prisoners whispered. The guards cursed. The captain sent urgent messages across the stars. And in the deepest pit of the cage of monsters, a human sat beside the Empire's greatest nightmare. The Devourer had been marked for death. But now it had something far more dangerous than strength. It had a friend. The message reached the throne world of Koresh in less than a day. Encrypted, urgent, sealed by the highest mark of the prison watch. The Empress listened in silence as her advisors read the report aloud. Her throne room was vast, built from black stone and veins of molten crystal. Banners hung from the ceiling, each one bearing her crest, a serpent devouring a sun. When the final words left the advisor's trembling lips, silence fell heavy. "A human has entered the pit of the Devourer," he finished, and lived. The Empress did not move. Her jeweled mask hid her expression, but her hands rested sharp and still on the arms of her throne. Around her, courtiers shifted nervously, their armor clinking in the quiet. At last, her voice broke the silence, low, cold, unforgiving. "No human can command what we cannot." Her words slithered across the chamber like smoke. An old general stepped forward, bowing low. His armor bore the scars of 100 battles. "Majesty, if the reports are true, then the human has achieved the impossible. Perhaps we should—" The Empress's head snapped toward him. The jeweled mask glinted in the torchlight. "Should what?" she hissed. "Honor this insult? Bend knee to a creature of dirt and bone?" The general fell silent, sweat glistening on his scaled brow. The Empress rose. Her cloak dragged across the floor like the sweep of a blade. She looked down upon the court and her voice rang out like thunder. "This is not a bond. This is not trust. This is a disease, and if we let it spread, it will rot the foundations of our empire." She raised her hand. The guards straightened. "Prepare the arena," she declared. "Let the beast and the human die together. Let the galaxy see what happens to those who defy Koresh." The order carried across the stars. By the time it reached the prison world, the fortress was already trembling with tension. The captain of the watch gathered his lieutenants in the command tower. His voice was sharp, though his hands trembled behind his back. "The Empress commands a spectacle. The execution will happen at dawn. Chains, fire, and steel. No escape, no delay. The human dies beside the beast." The lieutenants nodded, though unease shadowed their eyes. "Captain," one dared to ask, "what if the beast resists? What if it breaks free?" The captain's glare silenced him. "Then we kill it, slowly, painfully, before the eyes of every prisoner here." But when the captain turned away, even he could not bury the doubt gnawing at his chest. In the barracks below, the whispers spread faster than fire. "They will kill them both. The Empress commands it. Tomorrow, the arena bleeds." The prisoners did not cheer. Not this time. They looked through the bars of their cells toward the pit, toward the human and the beast that now sat together in silence. Some felt fear, some felt awe, but many felt something dangerous, hope. If the human could survive the impossible, then perhaps the Empire was not invincible after all. That night the human remained in the pit. He sat beside the Devourer, his back against its scaled side, eyes closed as though listening to the storm outside. The beast's eyes glowed faintly in the dark. Its chest rose and fell in heavy breaths, the sound echoing like drums. The guards above watched uneasily. Rifles clutched tight, one muttered under his breath, "Tomorrow they die," but the words rang hollow. None of them truly believed the execution would go as planned. Not after what they had seen. In the highest cell block, an old prisoner pressed his face to the bars. His body was broken from years of chains, but his voice carried across the hall. "I have seen empires rise and fall," he whispered, "but never have I seen a beast bow to a man." The younger prisoners leaned closer, listening. "Mark my words," the old one rasped. "If the Empress kills them, She will sow the seeds of her own downfall, because legends are not born from victories. They are born from defiance. As the night deepened, preparations began. Workers built the arena's stage, welding iron spikes into the sand. Executioners polished their weapons, blades, flamethrowers, plasma cannons. Chains were reforged 3 times over, thicker than a man's chest, glowing with the heat of furnaces. The Empress's banner was raised above the stands. Tomorrow her power would be shown to all. In the pit, the human opened his eyes. He reached out, placing his hand against the beast's scarred snout. "They mean to kill us," he whispered softly. "You know this!" The devourer rumbled low, a sound that vibrated through the walls. Its glowing eyes fixed on him, steady, unblinking. The human's lips curved into the faintest of smiles. "Then tomorrow we show them the truth." The beast's chest heaved, a growl rolling from deep within. Not rage this time, not hunger, but something deeper. The prison world of Koresh was a place no one visited willingly. It circled a dying sun, wrapped in storms of red dust that never cleared. From orbit, the planet looked like a wound, scarred, torn, and bleeding heat into the void. But what waited on its surface was far worse than the storms. Koresh was known as the Cage of Monsters. Its fortress prisons were built not for soldiers, not for thieves, not even for traitors. They were built to contain creatures that terrified even the empires who ruled half the stars. Every corridor was thick with plasma turrets. Every cell wall was layered with metals mined from dead worlds. The guards wore armor like walking tanks, carrying rifles heavy enough to rip through a warship's hull, and still, fear lived in their eyes, because in the deepest pit of Koresh's central fortress, below all the others, there was the Devourer. No prisoner had a true name here. Names were forgotten the moment chains were locked, but some prisoners earned titles whispered by guards in the barracks. This one had earned its title in screams and in blood. The Devourer was not simply large, it was colossal. Its body was covered in scales black as obsidian, each one as wide as a soldier's shield. Its jaws were lined with teeth like knives. Its eyes burned faint yellow in the dark, glowing whenever it lifted its head. And when it roared, metal walls shook. Bolts rattled from their mounts. Some guards had been seen covering their ears and falling to their knees, trembling like children. The Empress herself had ordered it brought here after the creature destroyed 3 war camps and swallowed an entire regiment alive. The journey to Koresh had cost the Empire 6 more ships. Now the creature waited in the pit, chained, bleeding from endless beatings. Tomorrow its sentence would end. No trial, no mercy. The Devourer would be executed before a cheering crowd. That night, the guards whispered. They always did when they were nervous. Voices echoed in the metallic halls, bouncing off iron doors and flickering lights. But this night their whispers carried something new, something dangerous. Someone went inside, a guard muttered as he strapped his rifle to his chest. Another turned. "Lies, no one goes into that pit." "I tell you someone did," the first insisted. No alarms went off, no screams, just silence. Then they came out alive. The second guard snorted. "Impossible. Anyone who steps through that gate dies in pieces. You've seen what it does. Blood on the walls, bones crushed flat. No one comes out alive." "Then explain this," the first guard hissed, leaning closer. The beast was calm, not roaring, not pulling at its chains, calm, as if... His voice dropped even lower, as if it was listening. The second laughed nervously, but there was no humor in it. Listening? To what? To who? The answer came from a third guard, one who had been on the watch earlier. His eyes were pale, wide, haunted. Not to what? To who? He swallowed hard. It was a human. Silence spread among the guards. The storm outside howled against the prison walls. A human, it was absurd. Humans were small, weak, fragile compared to the armored lords of Koresh. They had no claws, no scales, no fire in their blood. At best, they were quick learners, clever talkers. But no amount of cleverness could stop a beast like the Devourer from crushing bone and ripping flesh. And yet, someone had gone into the cage and lived. The news spread like infection. From guard to guard, prisoner to prisoner, until the whole fortress seemed to pulse with the rumor. A human had entered the pit. A human had faced the Devourer. A human had not died. By midnight, even the commanders had heard. They stalked the halls with their armored boots, striking the metal like thunder, demanding answers. But none came. The only truth was what too many eyes had seen. The beast was quiet now. Not broken, not defeated. Quiet as though waiting, and in its silence fear grew heavier. In the control tower above the pit, the watch captain stared at the monitors. Green screens showed the creature hunched in the corner of its cell, massive chest rising and falling with slow breaths. Chains hung loose around its legs. It could have pulled free at any moment, but it did not. The captain's hand tightened on the railing. His mouth was dry. "What in the void are you waiting for?" he muttered to the screen. "Why aren't you fighting?" But the beast gave no answer. Far below, in the maze of prisoner barracks, word reached the ears of the human himself. He sat alone, thin frame resting against the wall, head lowered. His eyes were shadowed, unreadable. Other prisoners watched him with a mix of curiosity and terror. They had seen him dragged back from the pit alive. His clothes were torn, dusted with black scales, but his body bore no wounds. The guards had expected to drag out a corpse. Instead, the human had walked back under his own power. Now even the other monsters in their cages kept their distance. He was not the largest among them, not the strongest, not the loudest, but something clung to him, something none of them understood. The human had gone into the cage of the devourer, and the devourer had spared him. That night the fortress did not sleep. Guards jumped at shadows, prisoners whispered behind steel doors, and high above the storms of Koresh, the Empire's ships circled, waiting for the execution. Tomorrow the crowd would cheer as the monster was slain. Tomorrow the Empress would see her will done. But tonight, a single truth spread through the cage of monsters. The impossible had already happened, and nothing would ever be the same again. The morning began with storms. On Koresh there were always storms. But today they were different, heavier, angrier, as if the sky itself knew what had happened the night before. Lightning crawled across the blood-red clouds, flashing against the walls of the fortress. The guards inside kept glancing upward, though they could not see the sky from their sealed corridors. Their armor clanked louder than usual. Their voices were short, sharp, uneasy. Something had changed. Everyone felt it. Down in the prisoner barracks, eyes followed the human wherever he moved. He was easy to spot. Small, pale-skinned, his frame thinner than most who survived Koresh. His steps were quiet, steady, without the usual tremble of those who feared the guards. Other prisoners, hulking beasts with claws, tusks, or scales, watched him in silence. Normally they would jeer, threaten, or test his weakness. But after last night, not one dared, because last night he had walked into the pit of the devourer. And he had walked back out alive. The guards had seen it. They still talked about it now. Voices hushed, though every word was sharp with disbelief. He fed it, one swore, gripping his rifle. Fed it? Another spat. With what? Bread, a scrap from the mess hall. The others laughed at first, the sound rough and mocking. But it was laughter that ended too quickly, the kind that died under the weight of fear. Bread, against a monster that had swallowed armored squads whole. Yet somehow, impossibly, the beast had not torn him apart. Instead, the creature had lowered its head, and the human had touched it. As if they had always known each other. That morning, the human returned. Guards lined the corridor leading to the pit, their rifles charged, their eyes fixed on him. The cell gates clanged open one by one, letting him deeper into the fortress until he stood before the final door, the gate to the devourer's chamber. The captain of the watch was there, armor gleaming, voice cold. "This is no place for you, human. Step inside again and you will not return." The human said nothing. He only looked up at the captain with calm, steady eyes, then stepped forward. The gate slammed shut behind him. Inside, the air was thick with heat and the metallic stink of blood. The pit stretched wide and dark, its walls scarred from the beast's claws. Chains rattled as the devourer stirred, lifting its massive head from the shadows. The guards tensed, fingers hovering over triggers, the beast's glowing eyes locked on the human. For a long, terrible moment, nothing moved. Then, with a sound like stone grinding, the devourer lowered itself to the ground. The earth trembled beneath its weight. The human walked closer, slowly, carefully. He carried something in his hand, another scrap of bread stolen from the mess hall. He knelt, holding it out. The devourer leaned forward, its jaws opened wide, teeth glinting in the dim light. One snap and the human would vanish into its throat. But the beast did not bite. It took the bread gently. The watchers above gasped. Some cursed, some muttered prayers. The captain of the watch gripped the railing until his gauntlets creaked. The human reached out, resting a hand against the scaled snout. The devourer rumbled, not a roar this time, but a low, deep sound. Almost a purr. Day after day, the ritual repeated. The human came with food, small scraps, never enough for a monster of such size. But the devourer accepted it. The human spoke in a low voice, words lost to the watchers, but the tone was steady, calm, unafraid. He cleaned wounds left by the chains, tearing strips of cloth from his own clothes to wrap around torn flesh. The beast allowed it, and the impossible bond grew stronger. The other prisoners whispered in their cages, eyes wide. The devourer bows to him. The human commands the monster. No. The monster obeys him. The guards grew restless. They reported every detail to their captains, who in turn sent urgent messages to the Empire. No one had an explanation. How could a human, fragile, breakable, tame what the Empire itself could not? One night, storms shook the fortress harder than ever. Red lightning split the sky. In the watchtower, the captain stood with his lieutenants, staring at the pit below. The human sat cross-legged beside the devourer, resting against its scaled side as if against a wall.